and good afternoon. This is Linda Swain with VOCM Roundtable, moving towards marijuana. Are we ready? Recreational marijuana will become legal in less than 6 months, and the province has been busy preparing, with some major decisions already having been made. The legal age to buy marijuana will be 19 years old, and consumption will be restricted to private residences. The Newfoundland and Labrador Liquor Corporation will act as the regulator and, to begin, the distributor for the province. VOCM has assembled a roundtable to discuss the road ahead as the province moves towards marijuana legislation. We have a number of people here in our studio with us. First of all, Justice Minister Andrew Parsons. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We have Thomas Clark. You're an entrepreneur and you're hoping to get started with a marijuana distribution business.
I am, and I hope so.
We have Keith Bailey, pharmacist who owns a Shoppers Drug Mart, and you are going to speak about the role that pharmacists can play in the legislation.
Thank you.
We have Lloyd Hobbs, Vice President of Programs with Safety NL. Hello.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here.
And we have a registered psychologist and president of the Association of Psychology in Newfoundland and Labrador, Dr. Janine Hubbard. Hello.
Hi. Good afternoon.
So I guess we'll start with the minister. Andrew Parsons, what is this legislation? What will it look like?
Well, again, that remains to be seen. We will. The thing that we do know is that we are going to see it this spring. I mean, we've got legislation coming to our House of Assembly. We're still waiting on some federal aspects. There are a lot of questions that remain need to be answered. We all know that, but again, it's moving forward, and we do know that this is going to happen in July. There's been some talk amongst other provinces over the past year about whether this might be delayed, whether it was going to happen, but I mean, there's no indications whatsoever that this will not happen in July of 2018. I'd like to think as a province that we're doing very well. We're ahead of the game. We've made a number of decisions. We're ahead of some provinces in that regard, but there's still work left to be done on numerous fronts. I don't think people quite realize how big this whole endeavor is. I mean, this is a huge policy shift. So there is work that's left to be done, but again, I'm glad to be here in a room with people. Just looking at the group of people here today from all different aspects, you can see how big this is and how all-encompassing this is. So happy to be here and listen, and hopefully we, like I said, there are decisions to be made, but we will make them.
Will we be ready?
Yes, undoubtedly we'll be ready. Now, what I will say, I was sat down last night and I was just going over some of my notes and thinking about it, and it just sort of hit me like this hasn't been done before. No doubt there's no decision that we will make, because again, some of this is made by the feds. We have no say in this. And again, this was a federal policy decision. Some of the decisions are provincial in nature, and we get to make that decision. And just looking at how we've moved, other provinces, everybody's made their own decisions. Just looking at the idea of co-location with alcohol, Nova Scotia said that's not an issue then. They're going to do that. We've decided not to. So you can see that everybody has their own perspective. There's absolutely no doubt that whatever we do, people will agree, people will disagree. And no doubt there will be, this is not something, once it happens in July, it's done. I mean, this will continue on. Policy decisions will be made, and then we'll have to reevaluate, and there will be more along the way. So, there is a lot of work to do, but we will be ready. We're listening to people. We've been listening to people. No doubt we'll be ready for this, but like I say, there will be mistakes. This hasn't been done, but I'd like to think that there's been a tremendous, amount of work put into this. So we've been thinking of all the different aspects and trying our best to make sure that each one's covered.
What role, Keith Bailey, can pharmacists play? Because they're already playing a role.
Mm-hmm, very much so. We have a number of patients at my location, and I teach at the School of Pharmacy as well. And I talked to the students yesterday. And almost every pharmacy has a number of patients now using medical marijuana. Some are through prescription, synthetics that we have in pharmacy now, and others are using it, which they get direct from wholesalers, distributors across Canada. So we think pharmacists have a much larger role to play in the medical cannabis area, which is a fairly small percentage relative to the recreational route. But we think from a safety perspective, pharmacists have a huge role. And across country, and we've talked to many pharmacists. I've served on the Canadian Pharmacists Association as well, our board. And as we talk to Canadians, the vast majority of Canadians are very comfortable with having it in community pharmacy. They see it as the safest option for medical marijuana.
So how does medical marijuana then differ from recreational marijuana?
So medical marijuana, as you can surmise, is used on a regular basis by patients. I've got patients in their 80s who are using medical marijuana. They use it on a consistent daily basis in a very much controlled route. Quite often medical marijuana comes from a different part of the plant and can have a different concentration of THC versus CBD. So the mix that you use and how you control it is quite different, and quite often patients who use medical marijuana are already taking 2 or 3 other treatments as well. So it can be complex for people. So pharmacists definitely have a role in terms of safety, patients understanding where to start, how to start, and using it with other medications.
Do they usually smoke it, or do they take it in a pill form, or in a variety of ways?
There's a variety of ways. We're not advocating for medical marijuana from an inhaled standpoint because of safety, but certainly it can be in liquid, it can be in other sources as well. So other routes for sure.
So Thomas Clark, you've been looking to set up a business. How do you feel about the way that this is set up so far, that the NLC will be the initial regulator and distributor?
Well, I think that the government has done a great job so far. Andrew Parsons and his team has done a lot of great work so far. The only thing that concerns me in the whole process is that when the RFP comes out from the NLC, I hope that it reflects the small business entrepreneur. I want to open a small specialty cannabis shop where all I sell is cannabis, and you will get the best customer service with knowledgeable bud tenders who know the product, who know what would be the right product for the different person. Everyone smokes marijuana for a different reason. If someone smokes it for anxiety, or if someone smokes it for pain, it would be different from the marijuana that they would smoke, say, for epilepsy or for seizures. The people need to have the option to go to a specialty shop. Let's say you let existing retailers such as Sobeys or the vape shops who currently sell nicotine vapors, they're not going to try and grow the industry. If Sobeys starts to sell cannabis, their main goal is to get more people into their store to sell more of their products. In order for the industry to grow and thrive, you need to have small business owners who know their stuff. So I hope that the opportunity for me, who doesn't have an existing retail shop, will be there. And in order to grow the industry better, that is certainly the best method. I know that that's the way the government wants to go, is to let small businesses and entrepreneurs open shops. I just hope that the RFP process is reflective of that.
Dr. Janine Hubbard, 19 years old has been set as the date as the age for being allowed to consume it. What kind of an effect does that have on a 19-year-old brain?
Well, as psychologists, we do have some concerns about the age of 19 as the legalized age. And what we want to make sure is actually all of our young adults are making informed choices. We do, unfortunately, have some evidence that shows that use under the age of approximately 25, unfortunately, can cause both some structural and connectivity damage within the brain. What we know is that the adolescent brain continues to develop until about age 25. It's actually the most rapid period of brain development other than in infancy. And it's a period where the brain is highly susceptible to outside influences. And unfortunately, what we have seen is that regular use during that age frame, under the age of 25, can cause issues with cognition, it can cause issues with attention, memory, processing speed, visual spatial functioning, and it can cause a drop in overall IQ. And unfortunately, some of those issues are permanent. They improve a little bit if somebody stops using, but some of them can remain lifelong.
And will the levels of THC be regulated in any way, Andrew Parsons?
Yes, that's my understanding, is that one of the big, things about going with a regulated industry is so that you can control the product and know exactly what you're getting into. One of the issues we have, and I don't disagree one bit with what the doctor's saying, we all know that there are effects that come with this. It's funny, one of the I guess common anecdotes that you hear is that people talk about alcohol use and talk about cannabis use, and saying that you don't see most times nobody has an issue with the person smoking marijuana because they're very laid back. But the fact is, it does have those cognitive effects. I mean, we all know that. One of the issues we have is that when people are going to the outside industry, when they're going, they don't know what they're getting. We have no idea what people are getting. We have no idea what it's laced with and who they're dealing with. So one of the things that going with a regulated industry is you know exactly what you're getting. And when you look at the producers right now, I mean, there's huge controls in place. I'm sure Keith could talk about this, the controls that Health Canada puts in place. This allows us to ensure that people are getting a safe product. I mean, certainly we're not advocating for youth. I'm not advocating for anybody to use. I don't advocate for anybody to drink alcohol or to smoke cigarettes or to consume cannabis. But the fact is, people do. So we know now with this here, with where we're going with this new policy shift, that people have an idea exactly what they're getting.
Thomas Clark, I see you're anxious to get a word in.
Yes, well, that's one of the big issues that is going to come forward with the new legislation. Currently, if the federal government's saying we're going to sell cannabis at $10 per gram, the black market is going to thrive if my shop has to sell cannabis for $10 a gram. Currently the black market right now is dropping their price to the lowest price it has ever been, and continuing on, that's what's going to happen. The price is going to get lower and lower and lower from the black market till they're only just making a small amount of money from it. And if I have to sell it for $10 a gram and the black market is going to sell it for $6 or $7 a gram on the street, which is up and coming, there's going to be, the whole idea of legalization for the country is to bring it to the forefront and to try and limit the black market. At the $10 a gram price, that's not going to happen. So what you're going to see is that a lot of people will come to, like both of these, the black market and the legal industry, are both going to be able to thrive, because you're going to find people who want quality cannabis that has been regulated by Health Canada, so they know that it has a certain level of THC, a certain level of CBD. They know there's no mold in their product. But then you're going to get the chronic smokers and the people from the cannabis community who have been smoking for years, who are going to say, well, why should I go and pay X amount of dollars at your shop for an ounce of cannabis when I can buy an ounce of cannabis on the street for $100 cheaper? So that is one of the problems I see going forward. Hopefully the NLC pricing will reflect, keeping the business legitimate.
How will that be addressed, Andrew?
Well, no doubt. I mean, that's a concern. And one thing I will say is that, unfortunately, there's a black market for any product. I mean, we deal with it. We still deal with it with alcohol. We still deal with it with tobacco. And certainly, even when this becomes a legal industry, you're still going to deal with this. But the fact that we're aware of this, we know that this is an issue, and that's one of the big topics we've talked about, is that, when you legalize something and regulate it, if you overtax it, if you make it so that people can't afford it and don't want to continue to go to where their current source is, that's going to be an issue. I mean, we're aware of it. We're dealing with it. We know that recently we struck a very good deal with the feds, and right now, in terms of taxation, it's going to be the max of either 10% of the production or $1. So, like I say, at the same time, I know that the people that are currently in this industry are watching this. They're aware of this. They're in business as well, so it's something that's always on our minds.
When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about the safety aspects of the new marijuana legislation. You're listening to Moving Towards Marijuana, Are We Ready? And we're back. This is Linda Swain with VOCM Roundtable, Moving Towards Marijuana, Are We Ready? And before the break, we were speaking about the safety aspects of the new marijuana legislation. Lloyd, tell us a little bit about what your concerns are from the Newfoundland Safety Council's perspective.
Okay, well, at Safety NL, we are dedicated to safety for all citizens of our province. And in our logo, we say at home, at work, and on the road. And we firmly believe that whether you are going to choose to be a user or just to be an observer as time goes on, that your safety will be impacted by the new legislation. So from our perspective, every resident that we say we're dedicated to their safety, every one of those we feel will be impacted by this. And we would like to engage in a discussion, and we're delighted to be here today to do this, because it is through discussion, I think, and mostly through a vibrant educational process that residents of our province will be prepared just a few months down the road. At home, there will be issues. If one of the big ones that we've noticed from other jurisdictions is in what we will call juvenile poisoning. Kids who get access to either edible marijuana or other forms of marijuana and accidentally end up at hospital because of consumption. That's one of the issues. There are issues relating to fire safety at home, whether you're growing it yourself or whether you are consuming it at home. And the same thing applied for years with, smoking in bed with cigarettes, for example. But that will be an issue. And then, of course, in the workplace, every employer is ultimately responsible for the safety of his or her workers. So there has to be a really good discussion among employers about how they're going to deal with this and what are the policies they're going to have in place come, if it's July the 1st, what policies they're going to have in place to address workers who come to work and they are suspicious that they have consumed. And then, of course, the third key one for every citizen of our province is the concept of impairment while driving. Now, we've dealt with that with alcohol for years, and I'm assuming the minister can respond if government will be looking at it in that light. But the whole key to it is the fact that we're a bit nervous of the fact that because it becomes legal, people are going to assume there are no negative effects to it. It's just a run-of-the-mill activity I take part in. But with alcohol, we see that while it is legal, there are certainly impairment issues that we have to deal with. And certainly the same thing will apply here.
Well, it's a good opportunity to bring the minister in now. How will that be addressed? Because I think that's the number one concern that most people have right now.
I can't disagree with that at all. I mean, that seems to be the issue that when I talk to people, they're most concerned with is impairment while driving. And what I will say is that what we have now is absolutely no tolerance, and that's going to continue for this. So there's a number of different things that have to happen. The first thing, and this relates not just to impaired driving, I think it relates across the board, is education and awareness, period. We'll be rolling out a campaign ourselves. I know the feds are going to be coming out with a lot of work on this. We have to continue pounding it into people's heads. And I'll just give an example. Something as simple as buckling up your seatbelt, is amazing. We used to have huge campaigns, and we had probably the greatest compliance rate in Canada right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And just after having met with our CMP before Christmas, our rates have gone down. I mean, it's simple. Everybody knows, everybody gets it. Yet, we have to run new campaigns talking about putting on your seatbelt. So if we're talking about something as simple as that, when it comes to something as huge as this, obviously we're going to have awareness and education that's part of this. And it doesn't matter whether you're an adult now or whether you're a youth. Don't drive. I mean, it's and I hate to use this word. I never use it around my kids, but if you do it, you're stupid. I mean, that's just period. I can't say that enough. But as I said, people get this confused where they say where it's legal now, is it okay? And that's the issue here. So we're going to be working on that. The other side is when it comes to law enforcement itself, and this is something I've personally talked to the federal minister about, and every province has, because we need significant funds put into training. So we have a number of drug recognition experts when it comes to our RNC and our CMP across the province. We need more of that when it comes to your field sobriety tests and being able to detect that. We need more of that. Then it comes down to the units, the devices. We're still waiting on the federal device to be approved, but I mean, we have to have more of that. So there's a huge, and again, it's a culture shift here. I mean, we're talking about shifting culture, something that has not been done. You think about it, I mean, there's going to be a learning curve with this. And that being said, one of the things, and again, I have no studies to back this up. I can only speak anecdotally. But it seems like a lot of our youth are getting it now when they talk about starting to get into drinking alcohol. There's a no tolerance there where they say if they're having one, that's it. They're cut off. And we've made some regulation changes in the last couple of years just about no tolerance whatsoever. So I really truly believe that if we can get to our youth, that changes the generation. And that's what we need. We need our new people coming in being aware of that. But we'll be very heavy on the education and awareness.
Struck me as you were talking that it all comes down to human psychology. And there's the human psychology of what to do and when to do it and that sort of thing. And then there's the more serious aspects of this and the impacts of the THC levels in particular. Dr. Janine Hubbard, what kind of effect can it have? Are there negative impacts?
There absolutely can be, and I'm really pleased to hear the minister talking about education, because that, as psychologists, is our biggest message we want to convey to people, is being able to make an informed decision. And what we know is that there are some particular groups that are going to be more vulnerable to the effects of cannabis, in the same way that if you are a child, or if you are an individual who has a family with a history of alcoholism, you're going to be making very selected choices around the use of alcohol. There are some groups who need to be making very wise choices around the use of cannabis. Anyone who has a family history of psychosis, of bipolar disorder, of schizophrenia, is particularly vulnerable to early and more significant onset, especially with early use. The other thing we know is it can increase the risk of depression. And we also know that with some of the higher potency levels, it can actually worsen things like panic and anxiety disorders in people who have that happening. Very often I'll see a teenager or a young adult who's had their first onset of panic. The very first question I ask is, did you smoke weed recently? And more often than not, that is one of the early triggers. So being aware of your family history, being aware of your vulnerabilities, and making informed choices.
Is the potency of marijuana these days different than when it was then? I'm just looking around the room and guessing your ages now. When we were younger?
It most definitely is. The marijuana that, let's say, my father grew up smoking, that was between 6 and 12% THC. The designer cannabises now that are coming out are as high as 32.5% THC, and that was at the Cannabis Cup last year for highest THC. So coming from an industry perspective, I'd like to touch on the education thing a little bit as well. As a business owner, I'm going to find that I have responsibility to my community. And at my shop, I plan to have a licensed security company at the entrance to my shop. If you're 65 years old, you have to have a picture ID to come into my store. So it'll be a strict policy of 19 and over. People who come into my shop, they'll have to go through the security process and then be let into a private showroom. I also, the education thing is important to me. So as a business owner in this industry, it is my responsibility to raise some money to put towards the education programs in the two schools in Portugal Cove and St. Philip's. It's my responsibility to try and raise money in the community to help people with opiate addictions. There's so many things. The education is the highest priority here. We've been using the DARE program for years, and that kind of lumps marijuana in with all the other drugs. So coming up with the funding from industry, from the government, from community leaders, if we all come together, we can come up with an education plan that will best suit our children going forward so they can make informed decisions. I'm a father of 3 kids. I don't want my children smoking marijuana until they're 25 years old. So getting that point home is going to be a responsibility of the industry as well as the government, I feel.
Keith Bailey, you've already been dealing with these things, having dealt with medical marijuana for years now. Tell us some of the concerns or things that you've seen in your practice.
It's interesting because as we tape this, it's National Non-Smoking Week. And in this country, we've been on a crusade for 40 years to bring smoking rates down. And we've gone from 60% to, low 20s in this province, which is commendable. Healthcare providers, pharmacists, physicians, nurses, we're a little concerned we may go back on that a little bit. And I can't put any data behind that, but there's a little bit of a fear that we may increase smoking rates, increase rates of inhaled substances, because we know and we need more research, but we know inhaling things long term is probably not good for your lungs. And the data will probably show that out long term. So we're very concerned about that part of it for sure, in terms of increased utilization and what it may mean for people that are not regular users right now, and the safety aspects of that. So that's one of our concerns for sure.
People who are now consuming medical marijuana for their own specific purposes, is there a concern that with the new legislation there'll be less, focus or regulation for them?
There's a little bit of that concern as well. I talk to patients who, for example, right now they get it covered through their medical plans. They can use it as an income tax deduction as well because they're using it for legitimate medical reasons. They're a little concerned that they may not have as ready access through medical routes as they would through recreational routes, or they may be pushed into a recreational stream as well, where it's not covered and they don't have access. So there are those concerns. There are concerns that new patients may opt not to see their physician, but choose recreational routes and not the right route for them, maybe an inhaled route that's not as safe, or some other options. So there are some safety concerns for those people who need it every day for legitimate medical reasons.
Thomas Clark mentioned education. What role does Safety NL have in that now?
Well, we believe that there needs to be a healthy discussion, and as a province-wide safety organization, we're prepared to be involved in that. The minister, I think, is doing sessions around the province, or has had discussion groups. We would like to be involved in those as they roll out. Certainly, we do driver education with beginning drivers, and certainly this will become a greater part of the discussion on impairment. When we deal with impairment, we just don't deal with drugs. We deal with everything from impairment caused by fatigue, so people driving long hours. It's a safety risk, and of course we have dedicated a fair amount of our discussion time on impairment to the new legislation that was referenced a few minutes ago on alcohol. Certainly, it will be a part of our beginning driver program that we will include more on marijuana. But that's just a select group of people who come and do a beginning driver course. How do we get to the rest of the population? And I believe very strongly that we need to do a couple of things. One, we need to start now and focus on the impairment impact of it on the issue of driving. But a major concern too is in the workplace, because my understanding is that the Supreme Court has not looked favorably on any sort of an idea of universal drug testing in the workplace. It's very specific to bona fide occupations that, like in transportation and safety, or natural resource production, which would include for us the oil fields here, but the general public will not be tested. So if I'm a roofer, or if I'm the carpenter who's coming to do something at your house, there's right now, the odds are there's very little you can do other than deny them access to do the work for you. We need to have a discussion on that. But larger companies, where I said earlier, the employer has ultimate responsibility for the safety of all workers. It's not just the person who has consumed that we have to be concerned with. It's everybody else in that workplace. So if I'm operating a forklift and I have consumed, and there's a question about my impairment level, then that is a safety issue for everybody in the workplace. And most employers, I would say, certainly small employers, really have not given any thought to the impact that this is going to have in their workplaces. If they are just a lumber yard, or if they are a supermarket, or what have you. So that's an issue where education really has to come to the fore right now. We've got just a few months, 4 to 5 months, really to deal with this. And so we're educating the public, we're educating employers, we're educating drivers, and of course parents and anyone else who would be either consuming or around people who are consuming.
And that's an excellent point. We'll leave it there for now, but when we come back, we'll discuss what role employers have in dealing with the new legislation. You're listening to Moving Towards Marijuana, Are We Ready? And we're back. Linda Swain here with the VOCM Roundtable, Moving Towards Marijuana, Are We Ready? And before the break, Lloyd Hobbs was discussing what the responsibility of employers should be moving forward with this new legislation. Minister Parsons, what role do employers play? Because safety is a very big issue here.
Of course, and this is an issue that has been there all along. I mean, employers are currently and have been dealing with occupational health and safety regulations, and not just consumption of cannabis, but on the consumption of any illicit, or in some cases, we talk about alcohol and prescription drugs. You know, at the end of the day, it comes down to safety on the workplace. So under that legislation itself, employers are expected to have policies and procedures in place to deal with this. They've been dealing with it all along. When you talk about big sites like going on, whether it's offshore or up on the, big sites or even but smaller companies. What I will say is that, and I think this point was brought up earlier, is that a lot of smaller companies are probably, don't have trained personnel to deal with this. And that's something that we're cognizant of. So that falls right back into the education and awareness where we realize that we're going to have to work with employers as well to talk about this because safety is paramount for everybody. So that's one of the big issues. It's something that hasn't been lost on us. We know that we're going to, and again, work with other groups to get that message out when we talk about the limits and testing and everything else. But it's certainly a big topic and one that I hear about quite a bit.
Dr. Janine Hubbard, what kind of an effect does marijuana or THC have on impairment on an individual? What would they feel if they're high?
Well, we certainly know that there are both short-term and long-term, or sort of medium-term and long-term consequences. It does vary a little bit depending on the individual, and again, as we sort of discussed, depending on the particular strain, but you can definitely see a slowing of thought patterns, a slowing of reaction times. Yes, for some people it can cause a sense of relaxation. Other people it's going to have a different impact on their mental health functioning.
Should you be operating heavy equipment, for instance?
Absolutely
Getting
not.
up on roofs?
No, I mean, it's very much something where you want to be cautious of safety because all those things that we talked about before, so your attention, how quickly you can process something, how quickly your brain can react to something happening is going to be impacted. So no, you do not want to be involved in anything where your personal safety or the safety of others is a concern.
We were talking during the break, and sometimes I wish we were rolling during the break because some of our conversations get very interesting. But we were discussing how this is revolutionary in this part of the world anyway. And Andrew Parsons, there are other jurisdictions where this has been in place and has been very successful. I'm thinking in places of Europe, Colorado, for instance. Are you looking to those areas as
no
guidance?
doubt. No doubt. We know that, again, this is something that's been around in Europe for quite some time, but we've really been looking to our neighbours to the south to see what's going on because it's happened very recently. So we can watch, basically it's almost like a best practice to see, how they did certain things when they talk about moving from the illegal side to the legal side. One of the things that comes out of it is that there isn't actually, I think there's some mindset sometimes that because it's going to be legal, all of a sudden there's going to be this huge uptake. Everybody's going to start consuming. And that's just not it. It's not going to happen. No doubt people are going to try it now. There are people out there that haven't consumed because it's illegal. They're going to start or give it a try. But what we've seen in Colorado, for instance, is that there isn't a huge uptake in this. But we've been very lucky. I mean, there's a number of states that have moved down this route, so we've been able to look to them to see the benefit there. I know there have been, myself, I haven't gone, but I know we've had people within visit and look at, just the regulatory side and look at just the infrastructure and what they've done and how they've done it, look at dispensaries or, how that's rolled out there. Then we look at our friends across the country here to see where everybody's going with that. So, we do have past experience to look to see, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And everybody's going to, try their own. There's no set standard here. Everybody's going to do what they think is best. We've even seen that across the country here. And no doubt that no matter what, maybe this is just cynic, no matter the choice we make, there will be critics of that choice because there is no right or wrong. There's basically, we're making decisions based on the best evidence that we have. And I'd like to think we're making decisions in the best interest. But no doubt, this is not a policy that you just set it in place come July 2018 and all of a sudden it's perfect. This will have to evolve over time. We'll have a chance to look to our experts to see what's going on and compile data and then we can work from that to continue on.
Are there concerns about how the black market will react?
Well, I mean, they are a business. They exist now. They will continue to exist. I'm not silly enough to think that that's going to go away. People will still continue to use that. We see that now. I talk to retailers now when it comes to tobacco. It's still very, it's alive and well, unfortunately. What we've done here, though, is I'd like to think we're taking something and making it legal. We're encouraging people that if they choose, make that choice. Like, we're not out trying to normalize this or encourage people to consume, but the fact is there's a reality that people are consuming. So we're trying to make that safer. We're trying to take the profits out of the hands of the black market, but they will continue to exist. They're going to continue to do what they have to do to make money, and we have to be cognizant of that when it comes to pricing, when it comes to enforcement and things like that, and that'll be an ongoing issue as we continue on into this.
In a perfect world, Thomas Clark, how would you like to see this roll out now, July 1st?
Well, this is the biggest public policy shift since Newfoundland joined Canada. There's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be hiccups. Nothing's going to be perfect. The private business model that with the NLC legislation changes, is the right way to go. When I see the RFP, actual RFP, and I believe that'll be out by the end of February, as far as I know. Once I see that, I'll have a better understanding on how easy it'll be for the small guy to get into the business, and I hope it is going to be easy for myself. As far as the black market goes, it's not going to stop. There's going to be enough room for everybody, I think. If our prices are low enough, it's going to impact it significantly, but it won't stop it. For example, a lot of baby boomers in Newfoundland smoke hashish. That's not currently going to be legal for me to sell in a store. So that market is going to be wide open. The government's been doing a lot of great work. I can't wait to hear their framework on the growing of marijuana at home. I can't wait to be able to get a recreational license to produce for, say, a micro grow operation. I have a lot of big plans, and I think that the province is going in the right direction, so people like myself will be able to follow their dream. And I look forward to serving cannabis to people in a private store where you'll get the best customer service, the best knowledgeable people. Thomas H. Clark's distribution.
Keith Bailey, how, if at all, will this new legislation affect the way that you do business? And is there any advice that you can offer going forward?
I think our biggest concern is that protection of the medical distribution network that exists now, and an enhancement of that to potentially involve pharmacists as well in a bigger way. I think patients I talk to who, and I have dozens who are using medical marijuana, they're concerned that the medical route may dry up and their ability to get access through that route may dry up. They're concerned about cost. They're concerned about coverage as well, which they already have. We've had medical marijuana in Canada for many, many years. So there is a concern that there's a lot of focus on the recreational route right now and not much attention to sort of legitimate, I would say, medical uses. And there's a concern that the recreational route may move forward too quickly and, create some bumps or some challenges for those medical users. We certainly want to see more investment in research and safety as well. So we don't want to see this out the door and sort of 15 years from now come back and say, oh, we need to do more research on safety and long-term studies. So we're encouraging the provincial government, federal governments to really get out of the gate early with research to help protect people.
Are there legitimate concerns out there, though, about the coverage aspect of things?
Yeah, there is, because patients, they know once it becomes recreational, some insurances may have challenges with them as well in terms of coverage. People who've been having it covered, or people, like I said, who claim it on income tax as well for medical uses. So there are some valid concerns amongst people that are currently using, for sure.
Lloyd Hobbs, I'm sure that you're in consultation with government on the safety aspects of things. What are the main things that you want to see covered?
Well, to start with, we're part of a national group called the Canadian Collaborating Centres for Injury Prevention, and nationally we have been studying this subject for some time now, and we've gone and done some observations in places like Colorado. We've been to, our researchers have been to Washington to look at the effects there. And I'll say straight up front that the numbers of reported injuries caused by purely by marijuana are not high. But I will say this, that in most of the studies that have been done, the numbers have increased significantly. So I may be talking 7 and they've gone to 30, but that's still 30, right? And in the safety industry, we always say, as long as there is one injury, your job is not finished, right? If there's one death, that's one too many. One of the things we would like to see government do, particularly through the Department of Health, I guess, is that there will be some very good monitoring of emergency room visits and all those sorts of things after the implementation of this. So we can, in this jurisdiction, not rely on Washington or Colorado, but in this jurisdiction to be able to say, look, since July of 2018, this is the impact. Now, if that is the impact on safety, what are we prepared, or what do we have to do to bring about change? We need to again engage, I think, in a general public education campaign. We need to be specific to the whole idea of driving and impairment, because that is going to be a global issue for us here. We need to monitor the impact of safety of children. And I don't think any of us condone children using marijuana, but we need to be careful of them having access to it, because it has become legal for others in their family or their friends or what have you. One of the issues that I mentioned right from the beginning was fire safety. We need to be aware of that. And the final thing that I'm going to say is safety of individuals in other activities. So somebody consumes and then they go and play soccer, right? Or they go and work out at the gym, and it had just enough of an impairment on them that they injure themselves in that way. So all of this are issues that we need to address. And going forward, as a safety organization, we think the number one way of addressing all of those concerns is through a very vibrant education program.
Dr. Janine Hubbard, you're going to have the last word here. Concerns, consultation, what do you want to say?
Ongoing education, both within the general public. The encouraging thing is, with the legalization, we will have the opportunity for really rigorous research. So we have an idea at the moment as to some of the impacts that we've seen through illegal use. Now that things are a little bit more standardized, we're going to have the chance for some rigorous research. We're going to want to make sure that all of our counselors in this province are up to speed on the impacts of cannabis use, both the underlying causes that may cause someone to choose to use, as well as the implications both for minor use as well as those individuals where it may cause much more significant mental health issues. The biggest message I can give is to parents to speak to their youth, speak to their young adults about making informed choices. The Canadian Psychiatric Association has recommended for those under the age of 25 who are choosing to use, limit the potency, limit the quantity. So if you are choosing to use it sparingly and use the low dose options when possible.
And parents are going to have to get up to speed on this as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, make informed choices.
Well, it's a fascinating conversation. We could be here all day, I'm sure, but we're out of time. I want to thank all of you for coming in today. Minister Andrew Parsons, Thomas Clark,
Thank you.
Keith Bailey with Shoppers Drug Mart, Lloyd Hobbs with Safety NL, and Dr. Janine Hubbard. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.